Hello and welcome back to Lena's micro experiments with democracy or something. They say dance like nobody's watching. Perhaps reading like nobody's watching is also very important, but I've started a tradition and when I say tradition, I mean I did it last year and it was nice, where I asked some of my Patreons. For those of you who don't know, Patreon is a website where you can tip people for the stuff they make so that they can make more of the stuff. My Patreon is called the Gumption Club, and it's also turned into a really fuzzy, warm, lovely Facebook group where we all chat and do like watch-alongs, and I give away books and very wholesome activities going on over there. And they're an incredibly intelligent and very interesting and very well-read bunch of people. So I thought, why not utilize that? Why not milk it and get them a little bit to dictate my TBR, a little power share, if you will. Last year, I made a video all about the books I was going to read, and I'm happy to report that I've almost read all of them. I'm still halfway through the audiobook of When All Have Said, and it's very sweet so far. And you may have seen some of the books recommended to me by patrons crop up on my best books of 2020. Ravenous to do this again, I did a call out to the Gumption Club and asked them again what they'd recommend me read for 2021, and oh, they delivered. They delivered indeed. I'm right excited. Where's my phone? Oh, there it is. I'm very excited to share them with you because I think, again, like I've talked about this a lot on my channel, but there are, and I think this word algorithm has become quite demonized in the last like 5 years at least, where everybody's like so scared of the algorithm. But I think there are natural algorithms that just occur within human groups as well. You hear something's good, you naturally congregate online or in person around people, they tell you about books, you read them. But one of the greatest anxieties in my life is laying awake at night looking at the ceiling and thinking about how many unread books there are in the world. Ones that I haven't heard of, ones that have been kind of forgotten and somebody has stumbled upon in a random library in a random country. So in a way, this is less of a power share and more of a re-randomizing of my TBR. Like there's loads of books on this that the Gumption Club sent into me that I had never heard of before, and I'm somebody who's been working in the publishing industry for like 9 years. And there were ones that I'd heard about, but I'd never had them explained to me in the way that some of the Gumption Club members had explained them to me, and I was like, oh, now I want to read it. Or they're ones that I kind of like own but didn't feel an urgency about reading, and they've been pushed right to the top of my TBR. So without further ado, here are 10 books as chosen by the Gumption Club for my TBR, and perhaps you'll get some ideas of what could be on your TBR for 2020. For those of you who aren't as tragically nerdy as a lot of us, TBR means to be read. My to be read pile, books that I intend to read in 2021. Like Wheezy Waiter's parents over here. Found it. Number 1 is a suggestion from Sina. It's a play by John Patrick Shaley, and it's called Outside Mulligan. Last year I made a bit of a rough resolution to read more Irish writers, and that continues into 2021. I read some really great Irish writers and even got to interview Anne Enright last year, so it was a top year. So when I saw this, I was like, yes, I do want to add another Irish writer to my roster for deaths next year. And this is what Sina says about this book. I'm going to need my glasses for this, it's undeniable. She said it's really short, she's really new to reading plays, but found this one really easy to read. It's really dialogue driven. It's a sweet little love story that makes one long for a simple life in the Irish countryside. I read it when I found out that due to COVID, my semester in Limerick would be cancelled. So it managed to transport me a somewhat romanticised version of Ireland for a few hours in spite of 2020. The playwright apparently writes a lot about his experiences growing up in religious institutions, and he is of Irish descent, as you are, so I thought that a little tale of those 2 Irish farmer families would bring you some joy. She also says there is a film coming out and everyone is hating on the Irish accent, but since she is Swiss and English isn't her first language, it doesn't really bother her. Fair play, Sina. We'll have to see, but I also am quite bad at differentiating between too many Irish accents. So, although unrelated fact, I did once see an Amdram performance of Guys and Dolls performed solely by Welsh people. Downtown 50s New York with a Welsh lilt is just another plane of strange. That was an irrelevant anecdote, but hey, what can we do? It's 2020, nothing really connects anyway. The number 2 is Flight Behaviour. Clara sent me this recommendation, and I'm always looking for more climate change fiction because I want to read more of it. I can't believe it doesn't feature in so much of our literature, even though it's like on scale the biggest thing happening right now and probably the biggest thing to impact everybody in the future. So it's less of a special interest and more just a confusion that it's not everywhere. Clara says, you have been responsible for keeping my to read pile going up to my chin for the past 2 years, and I am ready to pay you back. And so you should, Clara. I would like my dues, and my dues come in the form of this book, Flight Behaviour. It's by Barbara Kingslova, and it does what so many non-fiction books about climate crisis struggle to achieve. you have my ear. It depicts the ambiguities and discrepancies between what is known and what is and can be believed. Discussions about the climate crisis and the inability to believe and act are intertwined with different views on religion and faith, as well as a critical look on public education. All of the moles being whacked down. This is amazing. This book has given me so much to think about while still being a great read. I really hope you give it a try, as it has been the best book on the climate crisis I have read so far. There are loads of butterflies. I don't know if that means literally or metaphorically, but either way I'm on board. You guys are becoming my personal booksellers because you know all my tastes, like nuanced discussions on religion and faith, climate crisis, and criticising the public education system. The Trinity, really. I'd never heard of this book before, and I also kind of looked at the book description and it sounds really good. When a young woman's narrow experience of life is thrown wide with the force of a raging fire, is set in Appalachia, which is where Dolly Parton's from, so I can't wait. Now this one is one that I've had recommended to me quite a few times, and when it came knocking again, thanks to Katie, I was like, when the cock crows for the third time, I have to answer. And I am obviously also into Self-Delusion, as any good YouTuber is. So this is called Trick Mirror, Reflections on Self-Delusion by Gia Tolentio. Katie says, it's an essay collection about how different cultural events, issues, etc. shape the way we view ourselves and others. Gia discusses what it means for millennial women to navigate a culture of spectacle, scam, and oppression. This book was recommended to me by a friend who I really trust, and I have enjoyed every single essay so far. I also picked this book because when I looked it up, I saw that Zadie Smith likes it. We always trust her. And then also that she's been compared to Rebecca Solnit, who is an essay writer I've more really discovered this year. I've always kind of been aware of her, but I read quite a few Rebecca Solnit books last year. I doubled down on reading her because I was supposed to be interviewing her on stage in Newcastle. No! And Rona was having none of it. Maybe next time. So anyway, that comparison made me really want to read it as well. The next one is from Luke. And Luke, I am on the way to getting this. I'm so ready that actually if you look in this top corner, you will see the book waiting to be read. My body is ready. January 1st, I am reading How to Do Nothing. Again, there's been quite a lot of books about the digital age come out, and it feels like every time it happens, everyone's like, oh my God, there's a book on the digital age. And I'm like, they're always happening. And it's so hard to differentiate between which ones are worth reading and which ones aren't. Like, I'm not being funny, but like I wrote my master's essays on Jaron Lanier's stuff. Like it's been, there is a constant churn of them, and it's really hard to work out which ones are like genuinely helpful, because they could go the way of The Social Dilemma, which is a Netflix documentary that came out earlier this year, and like I was almost going to make a video essay about it, but there are some subjects that I'm too angry about to be able to like coherently talk about, and that documentary was one of them. So the fact that people in the Gump Club have recommended it to me, and also my friend Ariel, made me think that actually maybe this is one of the books that is worth reading on the topic, because so many of them, how do I put this briefly without boring you, are written by people who don't have experiences and haven't thoroughly researched the positive aspects of online collective discussion and community, and don't inspect all the ways that people might need social media and the internet because they can't put their phone down and walk into a world where everything's better offline. Because for a lot of people, it's fucking not. Anyway, this is what Luke said to get me excited about this one. This book is wonderful, both in subject matter and prose. It managed to spark the insight in me that our attention is one of the most important things for us to take back, control and focus in our current capitalistic attention economy. An economy that is constantly using our data, trying to sell us things, bombard us with information, especially now we have social media. I never saw attention as one of the central players in this scheme. Howard Dowell encourages us to resist by taking back, withholding our attention and refocusing on things we actively choose and that matter to us, like birds. Added bonus if you like them, or bioregionalism. Bioregionalism is not a word I've heard before, but I'm going to look it up later. It's a bit of a rebellious book, stimulating to resist and choose the third roads, not giving in nor escaping, but resisting. Furthermore, it's beautifully written, meandering, musing, intricate, intelligent. Okay, I'll shut up now, but the subject matter, the way the book is written and how much I like it myself make me think you might like it too. Perfect. I love the idea of there being like a third way. I like it not being about completely escaping it, but like attention. And it also, for me, I'm hoping it's going to be a really good follow-on from a book I loved this year called Outrage, which is all about how actually what we choose to get outraged about is also a moral choice in itself, and how we distribute our outrage towards the right people. So I'm excited about that. The next one is Under the Skin by Michel Faber. I've really wanted to read some Michel Faber for ages because he's done some really sweet interviews with Jen on her channel, but I was put off picking this one up because I saw the trailer for the film with Scarlett Johansson and I didn't really look that into it, and I just never really knew what Michel Faber book to choose. But Laura has chosen for me. It's Under the Skin, and this is what Laura has said. You may have seen the film, it has Scarlett Johansson in it, but the book is actually very different. It's about a strange woman who kidnaps male hitchhikers to keep as livestock. It's a brilliant look at power dynamics, identity and morality as they debate whether humans are different and treating them as such is wrong, which is an interesting perspective to read considering humans do this to animals. Recommended reading. One or two other people also chimed in and were like, yes, listen to Laura, this is an excellent book. I haven't read the book yet, so I don't know if it qualifies as sci-fi, but I even have a gap in my knowledge when it comes to books set in space, let alone the genre of sci-fi and fantasy. So that looks absolutely perfect. And I kind of really love watching the film after I've read the book, and I either like get to experience it in a different way, or I'll get to be smug and sit there and be like, obviously the book is better. Gotta get our narcissistic kicks where we can, okay? If that's my power trip, let me have it. A very healthy outlet. Next is another book set in space, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. What a title. This was recommended to me by Electra. She said, I haven't seen you diving into the sci-fi genre. Called out, Electra. You are correct. But I'm always trying to have people read some sci-fi, and Becky Chambers, the author, is doing an amazing job in making the genre accessible, cozy, very character-driven, with amazing representation, in my opinion. I don't know why, but calling sci-fi cozy makes me way more likely to read it, and I have no idea why. I mean, space is like scientifically cold, so I guess I had an assumption about it because of that, but whatever. She says, I think you will love it. The story takes place on a ship called the Wayfarer, and we get to experience the daily life of the crew whilst on a mission. Another suggestion by the same author, in case you don't feel like reading a first book in a 4-book series, although I see it as a bonus because it's a gift that keeps on giving, then I would recommend a novella by her called Be Taught If Fortune. I'd be extremely happy if you picked up one of her works because I genuinely think she is starting a new era in the genre for people to feel invited in. Sounds great, I'm on board. Paya has recommended me How to Write an Autobiographical Novel by Alexander Chee. This is one that I haven't really heard anything about ever, apart from my friend Rosianna telling me to read it, and then me instantly forgetting about it, and then being reminded by this and being like, oh yeah! Paya says, it's an essay collection that I first read in February, and I've already reread it lots throughout the year. When people tell me that they didn't just like a book, they have been rereading it, that is always like an ear-pricking sign for me. Chee writes about different stages of his life as a Korean-American gay writer, growing up biracial, living through the AIDS pandemic, and trying to find his place in literature. It's about family, grief, love, community, writing, academia, identity, and it's so beautifully written. When I started reading it, I really didn't expect to love it as much as I do now. I haven't been able to stop thinking about some of the essays, and it's some of the most beautiful non-fiction I've ever read, and Alexander Chee is just such a cool, interesting, and wise person. I realised that I was calculating it, and I realised I read a lot of non-fiction this year, and most of it has been memoir and biography, and there's nothing I'd like to change about that. I would like to continue to do that. It's one of my favourite kinds of non-fiction, and this looks like a very worthy addition to my shelf, so I'll definitely be reading that. Thank you, Paya. And if your name is pronounced Pia, I am very sorry. I looked it up and both ways seemed possible. Catherine, you recommended to me Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good, and by the title alone, I was sold. Catherine said it's life-changing. I think so often advocacy work can feel like a competition for who can be the most miserable or take the heaviest burden of care in the name of making others' lives better, but that martyr mentality is neither sustainable nor truly serving anyone well. Pleasure activism provides an alternative to this insidious way of thinking and encourages us to use our advocacy to work towards pleasure-filled liberation, and in doing that, work on behalf of the liberation of all people. So good. This is a book that I had never heard of before, and in fact I've never read anything on this topic, I don't think, on the kind of links between activism and Glee. I'm really glad it's been brought to my attention, and I'm definitely going to read that this year. The next one is The Vanishing Half. This is one I already own, so is it cheap? I don't know, but I'm really excited to read it. And Sammy's description of it made me even more excited, and I bought that in 2020 and I should really get around to it. This book blew me out of the water and I couldn't put it down. It's a fantastic analysis of family, passing, race and gender in a novel that feels timeless. The core of the story revolves around twin sisters and their daughters, but it's also many more layers than that. And then finally, Here I Am by Jonathan Safran Foer. This one is based solely on the wording of this recommendation, because this is not a book I had maybe passed this book by in bookshops before. It's quite an old book, I think. It came out a long time ago. And I can say categorically that I would never have picked this book up if it wasn't for this. Hello, Lena. If you end up mentioning my recommendation, please use my stage name, Mimosa Jones, as I'm trying to build my street cred. What stage, you ask? Well, the world is my stage. I only found you a month or so ago, therefore I ain't sure if you didn't read it. My recommendation is Here I Am by Jonathan Safran Foer. I know he's a white male, so it's not that exciting, and the book is like 900 pages, but no book ever made me cry so much. It's about family, love, and loneliness among those. It's about wanting to belong and also be oneself. It's about trust, longing, and yearning, and trying to find someone who is. It's also about being Jewish, a lot. The tenderness with which he writes human emotions is quite genius and honest. And also, and in capital letters, I don't know a single person who has read it. Please, someone humour me. Thank you, Meowser Jones. The stage name must be upheld, for sending this to me, because I'd never read any Jonathan Safran Foer till this year when a Gumption Club member recommended me We're the Weather, and it blew my tiny fucking little mind, and I've read it 3 times this year. But I'd never read any of his fiction, and I wasn't really sure where to start, and I definitely wouldn't have started with his longest book, but I cannot identify more strongly with the sentiment, I don't know a single person who has read it, please someone humour me. Because I feel like that about books all the time. You have that book that you can never find anybody who's read it, and you desperately need to talk to somebody about it, and Meowser, I'm going to be your person that year. I'm going to read that book. How many pages is it actually? Is it 900? It's 571 pages. Not ideal, but doable. If you'd seen my 2020 best books video, you'll know that I read 113 books this year, last count, which is like kind of inspirational and kind of repulsive. But it means I'm getting maybe overconfident, maybe a little bit arrogant about taking on more books on my TBR. So I've decided that I'm also gonna pick 5 books to add to my TBR from my Instagram. So I went on Instagram and I asked people, if you could force me to read one book in 2021, what would it be? Then I wrote down the most frequent answers. The most frequently mentioned were On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, Girl, Woman, Other, which I've read, Women Don't Know You Pretty, Red, White and Royal Blue, which I've read and loved, Homegoing, Lanny, Surfacing, Song of Achilles, Educated, The Vanishing Half, Strangers, 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and My Brilliant Friend. Now live, while you watch, I'm going to pick 5 to read, and that is going to be Lanny, mainly because I already own it. Surfacing sounds amazing. Educated sounds incredible. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is one that I've always passed over. But so many people message me about that book that I'm going to add that one. And then I've got one more, Homegoing. I'm also going to read Homegoing. So there you have it. That's some of my TBR for 2021. It's going to be such an exciting reading year. If nothing else, we can cling to that. A big special thank you to the Gumption Club in general, who keep me going emotionally as well as practically. So you can find links to find out more about the Gumption Club below. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel this year, particularly supporting the bookish content. They're never the ones that get the most views, but they're the ones that I really enjoy making and I feel like are the fibre of this channel. They keep it together. And let me know in the comments below what's on your TBR so I can copy. Because I have room. I've got loads of room. I'm feeling confident. Frog snug out.